Well, hello everybody, and here we are again. And we are working with a treatise on white magic. We're at the 30th program. We're dealing with the fourth rule, and it's the second program on the fourth rule. We have been previously emphasizing the need to cultivate the inner ear, and I suppose the inner eye, to sound a chord or an interval externally and internally as well, and to hear that sound. And the chord would be representing the personality and soul in two different notes. So he tells us to develop the sensitivity of the inner ear and to pay close attention to this inaudible hearing. And I think we can do that. And I gave some methods, some musical methods of doing that, alternating the notes of the interval back and forth until they begin to be heard internally as a chord. There's also the possibility of hearing three notes simultaneously, and eventually I suppose that will have to be done, monad, soul, and personality. And we looked at the idea that the planetary logos had a tremendous ability to do everything simultaneously and to sustain many chords and notes simultaneously, so very far ahead of us, Maha Manvantaras, ahead of our capabilities, we being just tiny little cells in that great being who has that ability. Sorry. Okay. Now, going on, we're at page 127. Students whose aspiration is keen and clear would do well to face the issue where the magical work is concerned and study their aptitude in meditation and their willingness to proceed with stability and caution. There's a seventh ray word with the needed discipline. So perhaps many of us are not quite ready yet, and self-study will reveal, if we are honest, where we stand. To facilitate this, he says, I would suggest that any who are deeply concerned in the work should study and answer the following questions in the light of their souls, and to their higher selves make reply, reply before the, as he refers to it, bar of the soul. We're talking about a court setting where the soul is the judge. All right, so do you feel that you have reached the stage wherein you can eliminate the meditation form as you now have it? Well, I think there are abilities that we all develop using forms of meditation, and they are given to us in our school work by the Tibetan, by Alice Bailey, and so forth. And of course, can we begin to meditate without seed in a more contemplative way? There's meditation with seed, meditation without seed. Have we entered yet the contemplative stage where identification with the object of meditation by the subject of meditation has taken over? So can we eliminate the meditation form as we now have it, enter with relative facility into the state of contemplation, let's say in which our meditation blends with the meditation of the soul on its own plane, soul on its own plane, can we actually recognize the vibration of our own soul? And by that we have to mean as well solar angel, angel of the presence. So, we have to go deeply into thought and search out our inner impressions and perhaps sensations and changes of consciousness. Any phenomenon involving the energy system can be examined to see whether something of this nature is possible for us. I suppose when we become mature meditators, it's possible to have a more free-flowing, spontaneous type of meditation and not be held rigidly by any forms. But DK did give out many, many forms of meditation. Some of them have made their way into the blue books and some not. So we have to, reply before the bar of our soul. This is up to everyone to do individually. And, what I would do as you read these things, I would just stop the video, put it on pause, and try to answer these questions, either in a verbal or, in internally mental, or perhaps a written form in another document. Does the sacred word mean anything to you, and could you formulate clearly the reason you sound it? Well, we are in that position where even the OM may be considered symbolic of a word that we have not been given. And much sounding of the OM, is required by us, as he has stated at certain points, and we have to see the kinds of changes, if any, the kind of consciousness or energy changes induced by that sounding. Numerologically it sums to 28, which is a 1. It seems to involve the idea of expansion, but a ring pass not around that expansion. It's more confined than the O, which is a monadic sound, and yet the OM, with its closure, using the ring pass not of the M, has its strong soul effect. Do we feel that to be the case? Can we somehow evoke? Is the soul evoked when we sound the OM? What are the energy changes we feel occurring, or is our consciousness not touched at all by this? Number 3, are you anxious to proceed in this work because your personality aspires, or because your soul is beginning consciously to utilize its mechanism? So 2 different forms of identification are required to answer this. We have to focusing as a personality, and then making every attempt to focus as a soul. And, these are distinct foci. So we have to, before the bar of the soul, before the inner judge, which in a sense we are in our higher nature, we can answer these things honestly. You don't have to answer them before others unless it is the teacher that asks you to answer this before his evaluation. Place it to him for evaluation. And maybe he has done that at times. He is asked for the answering of certain questions, and he looks it over in his own way and may make comment on that in the letters that he sends. If we were those students to whom he was sending letters. There's no doubt that some of us will have definite in-person contact with Master DK in coming centuries because he'll be one of the externalizing masters. But for now, so much was accomplished even without that personal contact. So just being in the stream of his energy through attunement and similarity of objectives. In connection with this last question, a close analysis is called for, and I conjure you to speak truth to yourself. Are we an aspiring personality, or really has the soul begun to take us over? We who appear to be a personality, we who appear to be an instrument, are we being guided now by this inner being which is using its mechanism, and we find out that we are also able to identify as that inner being? I conjure you to speak truth to yourself and thus clearly ascertain the true position. And, it's not going to be brought up with one's friends necessarily, or even with the master, as he says, this question lies between a man's soul and himself. I would like to interpolate here a few words in connection with myself. Students can sidetrack their energies in idle speculations to my identity. Well, as we all know, later it was inadvertently given out. Thus, accidents happen, but DK said the student's response to this suddenly appearing knowledge would tell him of their readiness for real training. It would be very revealing of their state, always trying to turn, evil into good, to look at it generally. Anyway, why have idle speculation as my identity? He was called the Tibetan at the time. He wasn't called Jawal. Of what moment is it? My province in relation to the group is to give the needed assistance to those who seek to fit themselves for active work as disciples. This is his task. His identity is apparently not making a great deal of difference, although he has written things of Jawal DK, which tells of the activity of his ashram and perhaps can be illuminating. I am a disciple, and having progressed further along the path of return than the aspirants who study these instructions, know somewhat the pitfalls, understand what is needed, and can aid in the preparation of the momentous moment when they pass the portal. Is more necessary? Well, it's nice to know, people would say. It's nice to know who you are, and that sense of greater intimacy might be induced by knowing, but Master DK thinks not. I can, he says, help you. I know the dangers. I know the needs. I can help prepare you. Is not truth of equal value if enunciated by an aspirant, a disciple, or a master, or e'en a Christ? We simply have to recognize and accept the truth and not fall into the glamour of authority, quoting the source of the truth, as if that would confirm that what is said is truth. Mayhap the nearer I am to you, the greater may be my usefulness. Well, there are ways to approach, right? And some of them are very subjective, and maybe the outer man can sense the approach of the master. My anonymity will not be broken, and speculations as to my identity are fruitless and a waste of time. Let's just say that some, I think, rather quickly intuited who this was, but they were enjoined not to say anything, really. Suffice it that I am an Oriental, that I am on the teaching ray, at least from the soul perspective, and who knows, maybe from the monadic perspective, though, like the Buddha who taught, and whose monadic ray was the third, that possibility certainly exists for Master DK. Suffice it that I am an Oriental and that I am on the teaching ray and closely associated with the Master KH. That part of my work is the steady search for aspirants of strong heart. It's not the total part of his work, but the steady search for aspirants of strong heart, fervent devotion, trained minds, and that I am a disciple, as are all from the humblest probationer up to the greatest of the great ones. There's always farther to go, especially in our condition, which is still upon a non-sacred planet in a solar system which, along the initiatory lines of solar logoi, is not yet a sacred solar system. We have far to go, in a universe in which galaxies can be considered tiny. So he's on the teaching ray closely, but there is a difference, I think, between him and Master KH, just as there is between the Christ and the Buddha. I've kind of worked out an analogy for myself here that as the Buddha is to the, well, it's not an exact analogy, it's a ray analogy. So as Christ is to the Buddha, so Master KH is to the Tibetan. Of course, the Buddha is a little farther along than the Christ, and so the analogy is not exact. But the Buddha does have a third ray monad that is confirmed in a treatise on cosmic fire, if we know how to read what he said about those identities who can put in a triple appearance on the planet simultaneously. And the difference between KH and DK seems to be one where we compare the second ray to the third. I would say from my present state of ignorance, the second ray monad of Master KH to the third ray monad of Master DK, just like, only in reverse order, the second ray monad of the Christ to the third ray monad of the Buddha. Yet Master DK is less advanced than KH, and the Buddha is slightly more advanced than the Christ. So there has to be a switching of positions. One lesson all aspirants need to learn, and to learn early, and that is that concentration upon the personality of the teacher, hope for personal contact with him, and constant visioning of that condition called accepted chelaship serves only to postpone the contact and delay the acceptance. Do we believe that? Well, we have to be about the business of serving immediately and not be looking for the personal satisfaction which may come from some kind of outer contact with the teacher. I mean, really, if it's his personality we're thinking about, it would be a kind of outer contact, his form, his appearance, and all the rest of it. Of course, it could help you maybe to go deeper into his real nature, but his real nature can contact us no matter what, and we don't have to be in personal contact with him. Alice Bailey said about the Tibetan that he was so intense in giving the great invocation that he almost materialized in the room. And you wonder whether he ever had materialized or whether that would have been a first. And if it was not a first, then she had been working with him all these years in great ashramic intimacy, but without in contact with his outer form, without being in contact with his outer form. So seek to equip your instrument, learn to function in quietness, fulfill your obligations and do your duty, develop restraint of speech and that calm poise that comes from an unselfish life motive, and forget the selfish satisfaction that might well up in the heart or wherever, when recognition of faithfulness comes from the watching hierarchy, that kind of moment of satisfaction, which comes from recognition, which of course we are not supposed to be seeking, and we're told that in the relinquishments that we learn about before in the sort of introduction to Rule 11 in the rays and initiations. So this is a quiet life of duty. Be equipped. Learn to function in quietness without causing a lot of disturbance. Fulfill your obligations and do your duty without proclaiming that you are doing such. Develop restraint of speech, and he'll get into that, and that is certainly found in Initiation, Human and Solar, and Letters on Occult Meditation. How we are to speak appropriately to the circumstance, which in no way compromises the occult silence we are developing, and a certain calm poise, a Libran quality that comes from an unselfish life motive, being an individual for others. There's a kind of a convent in Tromsø, Norway, very far north, that has a city which has the university located the farthest north of any in the world, apparently. And there is a convent called Totus Tuus. I guess I'm perhaps mispronouncing the Latin, but it means totally or all for you, entirely for you. So that's the quality of unselfishness enunciated in the name of the group or the convent. An unselfish life motive, and forget the selfish satisfaction that might well up in the heart when recognition of faithfulness comes from the watching hierarchy. They have to be so careful about what they say, because when they compliment, they can be feeding pride, and pride automatically limits one's consciousness and one's effectiveness. So he asks us to give this instruction careful consideration. These are days wherein many adjustments and changes are being wrought in the world of men. This is, probably the late 20s here. In the resulting confusion, individuals are appreciating the necessity for the uniting of their forces and for cooperation in their efforts. And the need for group work is more apparent than ever before. So this is enunciating the importance of group work. These are days, therefore, wherein quietness and confidence must be your strength, and wherein the only safeguard lies in a close searching of all underlying motives. I'm sure you've experienced that. I know I have. A thought will pass my mind, and the inner monitor says, no, that's an unworthy thought, or that thought can lead to pride. It's like something is watching all the time to make sure that one stays on the straight and narrow. As seen on the surface, many apparently diverse principles emerge, and the surge of battle appears to go first one way and then another. The clash of idealisms emerged during the 20th century and continues now. Certain ideals being of the personality, others being of the soul, to make one large distinction. As seen on the inner side, the emerging factors are simpler. So complexity on the outer and simplicity from the inner point of view. The contest leads primarily to a testing of motives, and through this testing, it is made apparent to the watching guides who, in every group, are capable of clear thinking, accurate discrimination, patient endurance, and the ability to proceed along the probationary path towards the portal of initiation, untrammeled and undisturbed in their inner life by the upheavals on the surface. So, no matter what disturbance arises outwardly in our lives, we have to maintain an inner quietness. And, all the things said here, and most importantly, right motive that can be tested all the time throughout the day regarding what we say and what we do. What is the motive for it? So it's a contest, and it leads primarily to the testing of motives. It is said about the hierarchy that they don't so much care about how things do work out from the good intentions of their students, but they certainly do care about the motive behind the undertaking of any project. Motive is considered all important. The testing of motives, and through this testing, it is made apparent to the watching guides. In other words, the teachers do watch who in every group are capable of and now, let's ask ourselves, clear thinking, accurate discrimination, these are fifth ray abilities, I suppose, patient endurance, knowing that all must be well eventually, and an ability to proceed along the probationary path towards the portal of initiation, untrammeled, unhampered, and undisturbed in their inner life by the upheavals of the surface. So much good advice, and I guess back in the 70s I was reading these things, maybe at a time when I could have really put them into effect. Here, more towards the end of life, oh well, we always get another chance, Could you but see it, the unrest and difficulty everywhere is producing a good which far outweighs the seeming evil. At least things are coming into the light. I sometimes look at the conflicts of the present day and what looks like an unnecessary friction and an eruption of lesser values trying to compromise greater values. But if it awakens people to what the issue really is, then it's good. Souls are finding themselves in learning dependence upon the inner ruler. Souls are finding themselves, we might say, soul in incarnation is finding itself and looking towards the soul on its own plane, which is also the same identity as the soul in incarnation. Interestingly enough, there is only one identity, and that has to be more than a platitude. It has to be that subtle sensed reality. We are learning dependence on the inner ruler, and when the Buddha said, rely upon yourself, yourself is the inner ruler, really. When all outward props fail and when all the apparent authorities differ in the solution proffered, then souls are thrown back upon themselves and learn to seek within. That's good, isn't it? And that way, in this way, true spiritual strength is developed. Okay, let's see how we do developed. DVD. Okay, there we go. Some of my earlier decisions are better than the ones that I'm trying to force into manifestation at this time. This inner contact with the higher self is becoming apparent in gradually unfolding degree and leads to that self-reliance and inward calm which is based upon the rule of the inner God, the immortal inner God, which therefore makes a man an instrument of service in the world. So self-reliance, inner calm, and the inner God. Self-reliance, inner calm, and reliance upon the inner immortal God, which we are. The all sense of otherness must eventually disappear. Whoop. So, all sense of otherness must eventually disappear. Several things are apparent at this juncture to the careful, thoughtful student of men and motives. That's what we want to become, right? The student of the human being and the motives animating, motivating the human being. What are the motives? What is the vision? What are the values? This will tell us a lot. The realization of the values held by any individual will tell something of the spiritual status of the individual. First. So this is, let's say, things which are apparent. Whoop. Things which are apparent to such a student. First, that idealism and the sensing of the plan for humanity have a close relationship. The plan is related to the third ray. The idealism is found on the third level. Let's look at that. That's kind of interesting. Let's see if I can get there. There we go. So here is idealism on the intuitional plane. And this idealism is on the third level. And the third level, the third ray, has to do with the plan. All knowledge, of course, is here on the same level on the atmic plane where idealism is found on the intuitional plane, and thus the connection, the connection between the third ray and the sixth ray. So there is an important connection between the third, sixth, and third rays. Sixth ray of idealism, third ray of the plan. Idealism is analogous, that idealism, I think I'm going to have to, I think I've erased something here. Let's see where we are. Yeah. Okay. That idealism, what? What about it? Okay. That idealism and the sensing of the plan for humanity have a close relationship. Okay, so now I put that in. Idealism is analogous to the thought that precedes creation. So according to the vision, so will any plan be prepared. The capacity for abstract thought and for concentration on the ideal is only now in process of development, for this capacity involves the utilization of certain atoms, the employment of matter of the higher subplanes, and the ability to synchronize one's vibrations with the great ones. So abstract thought under the third ray, and concentration on the ideal under the sixth ray. This relationship is only now in process of development. This is an important developing relationship. Okay. Now, going back to prepared, P-A-R-E-D, and going back to This, I want to grasp that if I can. Right. For this capacity involves the utilization of certain atoms, which are, I suppose, not sufficiently stimulated at first. The employment of matter of the higher subplanes of any plane. We see that idealism is found on the fifth from below, third from above, and the ability to synchronize one's vibrations with the great ones, and this comes particularly via the antikarana. Only a few people in the race are true idealists. I mean, it does real idealism associated with the sense of smell leads to the monad, which is interesting. Only a few people in the race are true idealists and are heading towards that condition of all knowledge on the third subplane of the atmic plane, though the numbers are increasing. The small minority only employ the concrete mind, and that's interesting when we talk about the status of humanity. This is the status of humanity and is a danger, because such people can be swept by the emotional appeal of demagogues, while the masses are swayed entirely by the emotions. So, boy, that is an assessment, isn't it? There are a few idealists. There is a small minority which works with the concrete mind, and the majority really have the emotional polarization. The time is coming when the intuitional body, the Buddhic vehicle, will be organized, what can we say, usually following the third degree, but with some action upon of organization after the second degree, utilizing the higher spiritual mind as its medium. Higher spiritual mind from Buddhi to the second subplane of the higher mind. There is in Buddhi a love, wisdom, pure reason function which is resonant because of the second ray with the second subplane of the mental plane, whereon the human beings undergoing the various initiations 1 through 4 will find their causal body egoic lotus polarized or focused. When that organization is completed, the lower concrete mind will be nothing but a transmitter or an interpreter. It will not be the area of maximum concentration as it is for some now. Even abstract or concrete thought will be superseded, presumably PRSB, by the intuition, and we shall simply have the inflow of the intuition taking form through the medium of the mind stuff, and we will have what Master Moria calls straight knowledge. We shall therefore have the apprehension of much that is now incomprehensible to our lower plane of vision. So DK predicts access to our higher abilities. In all great movements, you have some thought or aggregation of thoughts cast into the minds of the so-called idealists by the Great White Brotherhood. Some thought or aggregation of thoughts. So the Great White Brotherhood, and of course that has to, Great White Brotherhood Great White Brotherhood. That's one that really needs to be there, don't you think? The Great White Brotherhood impresses the minds of the idealists, and there is a high reception of that, but unfortunately my Great White Brotherhood is a little bit lame at the moment. Great White Brotherhood. I got to spell brotherhood correctly. Great White. Don't need a botherhood there. We need a brotherhood. So the Great White Brotherhood impresses the minds of the idealists, and this is one of the ways of working with the higher aspects of the instruments. The idea is sounded forth by them, not just the ideal. Ideas are found on the Buddhic plane and beyond. They choose a man or a group of men and cast into their minds some idea. You know, an idea is a being incorporeal, they are told, giving shape and form to shapeless substance, something of that nature. So this is how the working with ideas and not just thought forms. So okay, hierarchy is working with ideas and not just thought forms. So the idea is cast in. There, this idea germinates and is embodied by them in other thoughts, not so pure or so wise, but necessarily colored by the individuality of the thinker. And I wonder if we can discriminate, having received such ideas and the work that we have done upon them. So we receive the idea, and thought forms are created by us. So we, let us call us the idealists, receive the idea, and thought forms are related to these ideas, are generated by the idealist, the receptive man, and these ideas are highly motivating. You know the old saying that nothing is so powerful or irresistible as an idea whose time has come. That has to do with the divine plan and the unfolding of the plan at a certain point in time and space. These thought forms are, in their turn, picked up by the concrete thinkers of the world who, grasping the main outline of the idea, crystallize it and build it into more definite shape, into one more easily apprehended by the general public. So there is a sequence, a progression of precipitation and utilization by those who cannot work so easily with abstraction or even more intuition. It has therefore now reached the lower level of the mental plane, and a further development becomes possible. Now, actually, this is a magical process, this precipitation. There are not three L's in actually. It is then seized upon by as desirable by those who are focused on the astral plane. So, and I guess this becomes emotional idealism, right? This is emotional idealism. And if we look at this chart, we do see that on the astral plane we have emotional idealism on the highest level. It is far less comprehensive and filled with understanding than the idealism on the fifth level or third level of the intuitional plane. But it is necessary as a motivator for, there's Oprah. Okay. All right. It is necessary as a motivator. To them, it makes emotional appeal, becoming public opinion. These ideals are held as desirable by the masses, those who are not using the concrete mind as a major focus or other higher foci. It is now practically ready to take shape, and this is not take shape upon the physical plane without magical formulas. You know, we do receive these ideas which become thought forms, which become concrete thought forms, which become desirable ideas which appeal to the emotion, and finally they're worked out by normal human capacities. This type of normal precipitation, how about that? Normal precipitation occurs through normal human methods, not mantrams, magical words, commanding devas, and so forth. Later, maybe all that will come, and we have the practical adaptation of an ideal. So now we have the third ray in relation to the dense physical plane, where the third ray is very powerful generically. And so we have the practical adaptation. After all, the third ray is the ray of adaptability of an ideal to the needs of physical life. This has been a descent. So DK has given us a sequence of normal descent of an intuition into a practical application. Practical application through the use of third ray adaptation. All through this section, he seems to be telling us about a relationship that exists between the third ray and the sixth ray. It has been stepped down, stepped down transformer is lowering the voltage of the original voltage so that it can be borne, withstood, by lower forms. It has lost much of its original beauty. It is not as pure and as lovely as when first conceived, and it is distorted from its original shape, but it is nevertheless more adapted to public use and can be employed also as a stepping stone to higher things. People can latch on to such a presented adaptation and seek to climb higher, using it in relation to their aspiration. So from above, and this all is a magical process. Now, I get so involved here that I forget where we started. Okay, so this is several things are apparent to the careful student of men, psychologists, and motives. Okay, so, and first, and then what else is apparent? Secondly, what else is apparent to the careful student of men and motives? In this sensing of the plan and its later materialization, human units are involved and men have perforce to be employed. We, the men and women, are regarded by the higher workers as material with which to work. A vision is given of Tremendous possibilities and indications are also granted of the manner in which these possibilities may become facts, but beyond that, the great ones do not go. They do not compel the outworking of the detail of the manifestation process. Maybe unless, of course, you're being schooled in mantric magic and the ability through thought and speech to thought, visualization, speech to make some plan materialize without the aid of the normal hands and feet. Although the great teacher, the Christ, has said in the Agni Yoga books, by human hands and human feet. And we have that wonderful painting of Christ in the desert with this with a dark figure looking over his shoulder, and it looks pretty much like the presence of Master Moria there under a certain name. The detail and the method of concretizing the ideal and the necessary work is left to the sons of men. Thus, this is where we have the statement, by human hands and human feet. And it is said that the Christ put his hand down, I suppose on the right, and his foot down on the left, and there was some flower-like figure in the center indicating the accomplishments in the New Age. To the disciple, who is an organizer and transmitter of the plan, falls the work of filling in the detail and taking the necessary action. How else would we learn to be useful to humanity in the hierarchy except to undertake certain things by ourselves and without constant supervision and constant aid? At a certain point, the young person learns how to ride a bicycle without guide wheels and without the parent holding on. I've been through that one. At a certain point, the toddler learns to walk, unassisted by the hand, although there may be around him the ready hand to catch him lest he falls in his early efforts. At this point, it is wise for him to remember that he comes with his little plans under the same law as do the great ones in their large endeavors, and that it is in his dealings with people and his manipulation of the human equation that difficulties arise, as we all are aware. So the working units here are falling into three groups, we are told. A, those who can sense the plan and are commissioned to work it out. B, those who can be used but are blind to the greater issues. And C, those who can sense nothing except those things which concern their own selfish interests. Well, I think our work is pretty much with A and B. And we may be in both categories depending upon the relationship with whom. Okay, I'd like to get this underlined, if possible. Right. So those who can sense the plan and are commissioned to work it out. And then, of course, we have to work oftentimes with those who can be used, but who are blind to the greater issues, just the way the masters work with people, perhaps like ourselves, who can sense the plan and are commissioned to work it out. The first group the masters can contact. They work with these units of the human family and expect fair promise of average success. I guess they don't go too far, and they know that, no matter how hard we try, success will not be complete. Do not expect complete success. Okay. These both hear the sound and vision the plan. They hear the sound, maybe the sound of the sacred word, and the sound inherent in the plan with which they are presented, and of course they vision that plan. The second group have to be utilized as best they may be by the disciples of the world. That's, if you look at the analogy compared to the masters, we are very much like that second group. We don't know the larger picture to which they respond, but, we can be used. We're blind to the greater issues, but we can focus on some things which are necessary. So there's an analogy there, as the masters are to us in this issue of what can be seen. So we are to those who are here stated to be blind to the greater issues. The final group are frequently to be offset from the energy standpoint and used when necessary. This business of using people, I am reminded of Stalin calling certain people apparently working against their own best interests. He called them useful idiots. He was a hard man, a lot of Capricorn and Scorpio, but ultimately, apparently, although he looked so Capricorn Scorpio, he had Sagittarius as his sun sign. A lot of mystery surrounds his exact time of birth. One of the primary conditions that a disciple has to cultivate in order to sense the plan and be used by the master is solitude. Right. Solitude, that condition of apparent isolation in which we are impressed by the sun, soul. And the sun is many things. The soul, the monad, etc. In solitude, the rose of the soul flourishes. In solitude, the divine self can speak. In solitude, the faculties and the graces of the higher self can take root and blossom in the personality. In solitude also, the master can approach and impress upon the quiescent soul, because in solitude quiescence seems to arise, the knowledge that he seeks to impart, the lesson that must be learned, the method and the plan to work that the disciple must grasp. In solitude, the sound can be heard, so solitude and the apprehension of the divine plan are closely related. The great ones have to work through human instruments, and the plan and the vision are much handicapped by failure on the part of these instruments. So basically we're told here, cultivate solitude, or so arrange your life that solitude can occur, and in meditation solitude is found. And then we have more, but I'm wondering, no, maybe not, that we should not go to the third and the fourth, maybe not. I don't like to be interrupted, especially with the requirement that there be a program of approximately an hour's length to make transcription easier. So let's say that this is then the end. Now, what have we been doing? We've been talking about several things are apparent at this juncture. These things are emerging to the careful student, thoughtful student of men and motives. I think I'm going to make this bigger so that it's more easy to find. Okay, and these are the things that are apparent, and the idealism and the plan have a close relationship. And number two, we, the human units, have in the materialization of the plan and lacking many abilities, we have to be used. just as we have to use those who are still more lacking in the necessary abilities. And then we'll go on and deal with point number 3 and point number 4. So let's call this then the end of the treatise on white magic, video commentary number 30. And this is rule 4.2. And we're on page something. We're on page 132, and where did we begin? I always have to go back, which is, looks like a waste of time, but it's 127 actually. I didn't impress that on my mind sufficiently. 127 to 132. We always do about, 4 or 5 pages, depending on how difficult the material is and how alert I may be. I do have my off days and off moments, sadly, but one must simply go ahead and offer what one can, even though the instrument is not functioning as well as it might. So this is the beginning of a treatise on white magic, video commentary number 31, and this is not 39, but this is 30. All right, and we begin with rule 4.3. It's a long rule, and page 132. Okay, friends, so that's it. Thank you very much. Study hard, assimilate, apply. Do your best. Take in this great book, just the way we're still taking in the secret doctrine, even, more than 100 years after its writing. This will be that kind of book. Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.